For us down here in South Georgia, this time of year, August on into say mid-September, is when we spend the least amount of time in the garden. We go pretty hard in the spring on into early midsummer, and then fall is pretty busy around here on through the winter. A lot of stuff we can grow through the winter. So this is the time of year when we're able to take a little break. It's blazing hot out here. The humidity is suffocating. Not a whole lot you want to be doing out here besides maybe, you know, picking your okra a few times a week, peppers and eggplant on the weekends. So what do we do with those plots while we're taking a break? We cover crop them. Now we're about halfway through doing all the warm season cover cropping that we're going to do here on my homestead. Got several plots that the cover crops are looking real good. Some we just planted, and we got a few more to plant today. But first, let me show you those plots that are coming along nicely. So the first plot that we cover cropped was this one right here, one of these plots in the area we call the Dream Garden, and we used a cover crop of sunflowers here. Got two varieties, and you can see they're on up about 5 foot tall or so. Starting to get some blooms in here. They haven't quite opened up yet, but won't be long. We have some nice blooms in here. We can see that guy there is getting ready to open up. Now on a previous video, I tried a little experiment with interplanting some lacy phacelia in between these rows here, and sad to say that didn't really work out. What happened was, just as soon as I planted that, these sunflowers just kind of took off, and I don't think those seeds were able to get any light in there, and they just didn't really germinate well. I got another plot with some lacy phacelia planted. I'll show you in just a minute, but I think my timing was off there a little bit. I also may have planted them a little too deep. So anyway, we got a good looking cover crop of sunflowers here. Sunflowers make a great cover crop. Blooms look pretty. Pollinators can feed on them. Sunflowers are also known for kind of detoxifying your soil. Now I don't have any issues with any chemicals in this soil, but if you did, sunflowers are a great way to go to kind of clean your soil and make it all nice and healthy and chemical free again. So if you've got some pesticide residue, maybe for some compost or some straw you used or something, sunflowers are a great way to kind of purge all that out of the soil. So these guys here will start blooming soon. We got nice dense cover in here, not many weeds between those rows. I think the 3 foot or approximate 3 foot row spacing seems to work really well. You could probably go closer. You could probably go 2 feet to get them in there just a little more snug. I'd say 3 feet is probably the widest you want to go, but that's a good spacing to get good cover in here, good ground cover, weed suppression, which is one of our main goals here. And then the second plot that we cover cropped is this one right here, and we've got this thing snug full of iron clay peas. Now when I say cover crop, that's what I mean right there. That's straight cover. There's nothing can peek up through that dense cover there. And folks, this is why I always say plant it thick. Now on our seed packets and website, we have recommendations that are based on research that has been done and everything like that, but like I always say, you need to at least double or triple that rate on the bag to get good thick dense cover like this, especially if weed suppression is one of your main goals. And these things are just looking great. This is absolutely beautiful to me, to see that ground cover in there like that. One more thing about cover crops, another kind of side benefit is cover crops will kind of let you know where your nutrient levels stand in your soil. Now we don't fertilize cover crops at all. We just plant them and let them go. But if your cover crops are nice and green and healthy like this, I'll let you know you got some good nutrient levels in your soil. If they don't, if your cover crops look kind of pitiful, pale, yellow, then you might need to put you some compost in there, you're probably gonna have to fertilize your plants a little more. So it's a good little indicator plant that kind of lets you know where your soil stands there. And by the looks of these peas here, I'd say this plot is in pretty good shape. Now to some plots here that we just planted. So this is our biggest plot here on the property, where we still got some eggplants, those giant sunflowers, and nice sweet potato patch right there. And there's Chloe. But we had these open spaces right here where we had our second succession planting of summer squash, and then over here on this very end we had some cherry tomatoes and stuff planted that we've since pulled up. So what I did was I came in here and sowed some buckwheat, and you can see it's just now starting to come up. Looks a little patchy, but it'll fill in really well once it gets up and going here. So we got buckwheat down here, and buckwheat is a nice cover crop because it's fairly short term. You know, you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks on buckwheat. It's really easy to turn over, and that's why I planted it right here. I'm going to be probably putting some more sunflowers in here, doing a little test plot with some new sunflower varieties. And so I wanted something fairly quick, you know, 4 to 6 weeks. That way, you know, early September, mid-September, I can have this thing turned over and put some more sunflowers in there. So we got buckwheat right there, and more buckwheat over there on the other side of those sunflowers. Excuse me, on the other side of those sweet potatoes. And then the last piece that I have cover cropped most recently is this little spot right here. This is my pepper plot, but I had some purple bell peppers, 2 rows of them right here. They just weren't doing anything, so I pulled them up. My beehives right there, and I figured this was a good spot to retry that lacy Phacelia, because it's supposed to be known as one of the top crops for bees. And I haven't been long planted this. We can see it starting to come up there. Kind of hard to see, those things are tiny, but we planted it pretty thick. It's starting to come up. It's just a little, seems to be a little slower to germinate than something like buckwheat or the peas. But it's coming up, and should have a nice little patch of lacy Phacelia, some tasty flowers there for our bees. So as far as this lacy Phacelia goes, I showed you the sunflower plot where it didn't really work out. Seems like these seeds prefer light to germinate. I didn't rake these in at all. I just cultivated the area and kind of strewed the seeds on top, watered them overhead, and they seem to germinate better that way when they get a little light. That's what happened with the sunflowers. There was just not any light there, and they're shaded out. So if you do plant this lacy Phacelia, a little tip I found, don't rake them in too deep, don't plant them too deep. Just kind of lay them on top of the soil there. So we got 4 different warm season cover crops going currently. We got sunflowers, we got iron clay peas, we got buckwheat, and we've got that lacy Phacelia. And we're going to add to that number today. So we got this plot right here where we had our second planting of sweet corn. We had our temperature sweet corn in here, and this is my weediest plot of all 10 plots that I have. Now you can't tell it now because it's all cleaned up, but we got those corn stalks chopped up, got it tilled once, everything incorporated good, and this certainly needs a cover crop. It's probably going to need some tarping after a cover crop, but we're going to need to put a cover crop down here to keep any of that crabgrass and those pesky weeds we got in that plot right there from thriving again. We really got to work on our weed seed bank here and get it back down so this plot is a little more easy to grow in. And then we've got this guy here that's going to need something planted in it. This is where we had all our tomatoes planted, all 6 rows of them. See, that's nice and clean there. And I know it's crazy, some of you guys up north are just now starting to harvest tomatoes. We've been done with tomatoes for about 3 or 4 weeks now. We got this cleaned up, got all our stakes, twine, plants, everything out of here. Now this is my sandiest plot of all 10, and you can look at that soil there and tell it kind of looks pretty powdery, and it is. It's just as we get closer, there's a pond behind There's a couple rows of pine trees there. As we get closer to that pond, the soil gets sandier and sandier for some reason. So this is one of those plots where we have to always be really, you know, trying to add organic matter to it. Compost, cover crops, all that kind of good stuff to keep the organic matter up. Because in this powdery, really sandy soil like this, that organic matter just burns up with a quickness. I composted this just as much as I did some of those other plots, but you really can't tell. It's like I said, it just burns up so fast in this kind of really, really sandy soil here. So this is one we definitely got to cover crop. Definitely always got to be adding organic matter to keep these soils somewhat healthy, so we don't have to fertilize quite as much when we plant vegetable crops in here. So now let's talk about which cover crops we're going to be planting today. Now, up to this point, I've just been putting a single species of cover crop in each plot. I haven't really experimented ever with mixing warm season cover crops. Now, last fall / winter, we did some experimentation with mixing some cool season cover crops. We made our own mix of hairy vetch, daikon radishes, and Austrian winter peas, and that worked amazing. Had some really, really good soil as a result of that combination. So today I want to try mixing some of these warm season cover crops. You see, each of these cover crops have their own set of beneficial fungi or mycorrhiza, and so the more you can combine them, the more greater diversity of soil life you can obtain, supposedly. So that's what we're going for here. Now, in the first plot where I had that temptress sweet corn, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant some iron clay peas. I was really, really happy, or I am really, really happy with how that one plot looks there. Really like this as a cover crop so far. But in addition to the iron clay peas, I'm also gonna plant some sorghum Sudan grass in there. Now, sorghum Sudan grass is probably my favorite warm season cover crop because I can get the most out of it as far as adding biomass, adding organic matter to the soil. This stuff right here takes repeated mowings really, really well. So when it gets a foot or 2 foot tall, I can come in there with my push mower with a mulching kit on it, and I can just mow it, kind of chop and drop that material. It'll grow back, and I can mow it 3 or 4 times before it will start trying to go to seed on me. So that's a lot of addition of organic matter with all those clippings being added to the soil. That's what makes sorghum Sudan grass probably my favorite of all the warm season cover crops. So that first plot with the temptress sweet corn, we're going to combine iron clay peas and sorghum Sudan grass. Now, the sorghum Sudan grass will get taller than the iron clay peas and may eventually shade them out, but it shouldn't happen until those peas get nice and fully developed. And the peas, once they flower, the sorghum Sudan grass, I imagine, will be about as tall as the peas, and we'll just mow it all down at one time. So in this case, we're not going to be repeatedly mowing the sorghum Sudan grass. We're going to let the peas do their thing, and then whatever height the sorghum Sudan grass is at that time, we'll just mow it all down, chop it all down, add all that biomass back to the soil. Now, where we had our tomatoes, we're going to also be combining some cover crops. I'm going to put sorghum Sudan grass down there as well, but I'm also going to be adding some sun hemp. Now, sun hemp is all the rage. It's probably the most popular warm season cover crop we carry. We sell more of this than probably any of the others. And for good reason. It's probably the best one for your soil. It just does miraculous things for the soil. The only downside to sun hemp is that if you let it get really tall, this stuff can get on up, 7, 8 foot tall easy. When it gets really tall like that, the stalks become really fibrous, and you really need, a heavy duty brush mower to knock it all down. However, I did a little experimentation late last summer in a plot and tried mowing this sun hemp kind of like I do the sorghum Sudan grass. And I noticed that it will come back after mowing. Not quite to the extent that the sorghum Sudan will, but this stuff will kind of keep growing even when it's been mowed fairly short. So I'm going to plant this in along with the sorghum Sudan grass, and that's where I'm going to do that repeated mowing that I talked about earlier, where once it gets up, 1-2 foot tall, we're going to come in there and mow it, chop and drop that stuff, let it grow up again, mow it again, and just keep mowing it, keep it small and manageable. And that also allows us quick turnover. If we do decide we want to plant some vegetables in that plot in the fall, with it being short like that, we can turn over that crop real quick. Once, 1 or 2 cultivations, we'll get everything mixed in there real nice and we can turn it over quickly. So today we're combining warm season cover crops to get some maximum benefit in these plots. So for mixing the iron clay peas with the sorghum Sudan, we could just take a 5-gallon bucket, pour both of them in there, mix them around with our hands and kind of stroll them both at the same time. I did that with the cool season cocktail I did last fall. But I think in this case, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna strow the peas by hand and then come in behind that and strow the sorghum Sudan grass by hand. Like I said, I always want to plant these guys thick. This is a 1,000 square foot plot behind me. I'm probably going to put this whole 5-pound bag of peas down here and then this whole 5-pound bag of sorghum Sudan grass. Ground cover is my goal here. I want it nice and dense and thick. And then over here where we're going to be combining sun hemp and sorghum Sudan grass, I'm going to use close to 10 pounds of sorghum Sudan grass and 5 pounds of sun hemp. When you're planting this sorghum Sudan grass to mow it and keep it short like that, you're not going to get a lot of the shade foliage that you would if you let it get taller. So we want to plant it really thick to get that kind of dense mat of vegetation along the soil. It's going to prevent any weeds from popping up through there. All right. We got that seed strode there, got it nice and raked in, leveled out. Now it's time to put some water on it. When it comes to cover crops, I don't like to wait on the rain. I like to go ahead and soak them in, get those plots nice and wet so we get some good germination. So I'll take my tripod sprinkler, I'll let it run. I got 2 of them. I'll let it run on both of those plots probably all afternoon, and then usually an hour each day for the next 3 or 4 days until everything comes up good. If we get a rain, I won't have to water them, but I like to give them plenty of water to get some good, even germination there. Now, as far as cover crops go, a lot of people ask, why should you cover crop? And if you're one of those people who has repeated pest and disease issues that just seem to get worse and worse and worse every year in your garden, you definitely need to be cover cropping. Cover cropping has tons of benefits, but one of the main ones is that it breaks that pest and disease cycle. So if you have a lot of pest and disease issues, you need to be cover cropping this time of year. It will do wonders for your garden in the future and kind of dampen that pest and disease pressure. Really help you have more successful harvests for many years to come. So we've got 10 subplots here on my homestead, and currently we've got cover crops, warm season cover crops in 6 of them. Now I still have 1 more to put a cover crop in where I had my South Anna butternut squash. I've got that mowed down, scalped pretty good. Still waiting on some of those vines to kind of break down and die so I can rip up my drip tape and get that cultivated. And once we get that cover crop planted there, we'll have 7 out of our 10 plots with a warm season cover crop on them, which is good in my mind. That's the heaviest I've ever cover cropped in the warm season. As I see the benefits of it increase year over year, it makes me want to do more and more of it. I'll put some links in the description below so you can go get your warm season cover crops to feed that soil, add organic matter, break those pest and disease cycles, and suppress any new weed growth in these hot summer months. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button so you get notified every time we come out with a new video. And if you did enjoy this video, check out these other 2 warm season cover crop videos right here. I think you'll really enjoy these as well. We'll see you next time.